So moving along to what you see in front of you here, the Bologna Open Recognition Declaration. Feel free to chime in, Serge, if you wish. This is something that Serge and I, working through the issues of planning. Okay. Working through the issues of planning, we're inspired by our location here in Bologna, historic city, location of the first university in Europe, and site of the Bologna Open Recognition Declaration. And we thought, and this was a reflection of Serge's from the early days of the portfolio conference, the ePortfolio conference, and then migrating into badges. It's really, I think the passion for us both, deep learning is important. The idea of portfolios for learning is important, but really for us, it was, the theme was recognition, and I've been using that R word all through these 3 days, and as has Serge, and that's what we thought was needed here, was the idea of going beyond deep learning, going beyond it as a learning strategy, talk about a recognition strategy and what that really means. So we were inspired somewhat by the Bologna Declaration itself, just talking about credential transfer, but also such things as the Shuttleworth Declaration. Personal story from me, one of the reasons I was attracted to Open Badges was because Mark Sermon was associated with it. I knew Mark Sermon from 20 years ago when he was a community cable producer for McLean Hunter in Toronto, and was helping me trying to make a transition from being a video editor to being a video producer. And he was the guy walking around with the lights and running the camera when I was interviewing people making documentary videos. And when I saw the Cape Town Declaration for Open Education come through about 10 years ago, it had credibility for me, and that's what sort of drew me. So when the badges came along later, those had credibility as well. So what we came up with was the idea that what does open recognition mean? And really it comes down to 3 main areas, and I would summarize those as being people, where are we here? Yeah, so open recognition for all. It's about people, it's about technology, and it's about policies. So what we're talking about is we're saying that everyone has the right and should actively participate and take ownership of recognition, demand it, assert it, and it means taking responsibility for your learning and the learning of others, recognizing the learning of others, and working in groups and working in communities to help make this happen. In terms of technologies, there have been a number of discussions about this. The idea of having true interoperability, true portability, and the idea that it doesn't have to be in one shiny silo in order to work. In terms of policies, this is perhaps the most important, but it's one that is also probably the most difficult. The idea of getting support from the top down, making it possible for people to make those transitions from youth, from disenfranchised groups in society, and work their way through to productive lives. Any comments to add to that, Serge?
Yes, it is now signed by a number of organizations. For example, you have Seller, Belgium, who have signed it. Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Salor.
Yeah. We have also a Welsh association. There is a Welsh trade union that has signed it. Chineka, the president of Chineka signed for Chineka. Batchcraft has signed it, Learning Machine. So it's really a start. People are starting, an organization are starting to endorse the declaration. I think we've been very inspired by the Cape Town Declaration, and if you look at the 3 parts that were commented by Don, probably the most important, well, they are all equally important, but I think the first part, I want to read it because I think this is really what we would like to achieve is First, we encourage everyone, learners, educators, citizens, and organizations to actively participate in and take ownership of the emerging open recognition movement. Participating includes taking personal responsibility in one's own learning and in the recognition of others' achievements, contributing to the design, implementation, and or exploitation of local and or global system of recognition. This is really the idea of building grassroots recognition systems. We need top-down, of course. We need academia. We need a high-stakes certification. But there is a space for letting people build their own system of recognition. They exist. I mean, informal recognition, informal learning exists. It's just it has not been materialized into something, and open badges can be the powerful tool to elicit these informal networks of recognition.
So just to say that we encourage all of you to sign it, and if possible, sign it as an organization. We appreciate it if you can sign it personally. I think it's going to help us. We are working on other levels, basically lobbying other organizations to sign it actively. But the more you each can sign it, and the more you can share the fact that you've signed it will help us. And once organizations such as Cineca and the other ones that Serge has mentioned, I think that will lead to a rising tide of commitment. And speaking of sharing, we basically it's quite easy to sign. By the way, openrecognition.org, and then just work your way down to the bottom and add yourself to the system. One thing I would suggest is that not only do you sign it, but you claim the badge. So basically, it's get on board with your badge. If I right-click here, it just opens up a badge application. And this gets at the idea that badges aren't just for assessment. They aren't necessarily just for achievement. They can also be a statement of values. And if I'm on, well, there we go.
No, I'm showing it. Don't worry.
Okay, good. All right, good. Okay.
Magic.
Excellent. Okay, I forgot you had plugged in. So basically, you simply fill in the application saying, I want this, you receive it, you present it, and it's a statement of your values. And it's a way of building a bigger picture of yourself in terms of your values and not what somebody else says about you.
I think the other point I would like to add, you have started to have conversations with a few of us here, is thinking about an open recognition alliance. There is a move to bring the specification of the open badge standards to IMS, and I think IMS is a great organization for standards, but it's not an organization that engages with the community. For example, if someone wants to start a badge project somewhere, it's not IMS that will be able to respond like the Badge Alliance was able to do it. So we are considering, it would be interesting to maybe to discuss that now or in the future. Those would be interested to be associated to the conversation around the creation of an Open Recognition Alliance. That would be, please contact us, or we can have it at some point today if you like.
And you may contact them if you're a signer of the declaration. One really important thing to know about the declaration is that there's these three main channels through which open recognition happens. It's participation, as everyone joining in as a recognizer of learning and as someone whose learning is recognized. And then there is as, technology developer and user. Folks to make sure, like the conversations we had in the hackathon, to help figure out what we do in terms of technology and design of technology that helps support open recognition, and then also in this policy space. And so everyone in this room can participate in at least one of these roles and can specialize potentially in one more than the other, or have a balanced approach. The many organizations that and individuals that are represented in this room, as I said earlier, I was very impressed with all of the conversations that we're having. We have organizations that are really taking their own capabilities and building the future of open recognition. Taking these values and turning them into technology, such as in the role of the Bester platform, or Claim, or Descendum's Open Badge Factory and Open Badge Passport, the e-portfolio systems that we use and are improving, the Reclaim hosting style of using any technology, very easy to use tools to create your own recognition of the learning that you've done. And then combining these efforts all together and getting onto the same wavelength, I think is really the next step for this movement. Making sure that as we dedicate ourselves to building good technology to support open recognition, as we dedicate ourselves to practicing open recognition in our own lives, and then also supporting it through our cities, cities of learning, and through our governments. We all want to be able to coordinate these efforts. And so I think being connected over the next year will really help foster some collaboration between people who are in this room, and really great opportunities to enhance our own efforts in this space. And so the idea of an Open Recognition Alliance, and of the many smaller, target market focused or geographic focused networks that we will build around the ideas of open recognition. This is a really important channel for us to make sure that we are on that same wavelength, and we don't let opportunities for collaboration, fall by the wayside when we could otherwise, really find the partner that we need to enhance the impact of our own investment.
So, Serge, since you're right here, my question was, so when you talk about open recognition, we had a long discussion during the hackathon about endorsements as a standard, as a sort of a broadly based standard. Is there a difference that I should understand in language between open recognition and an effective sort of broad-based endorsement standard?
I'll take this first, and then I imagine Serge has some comments because he's thought deeply on the idea of endorsement as recognition. Serge and I were privileged to be accepted to present together at the Open Ed conference in 2014, as Serge mentioned. And the focus of that presentation was the idea that you build your values into your technology. So you build technology that represents the goal that you'd like to see in the world. That if you want open recognition, you build something like open endorsement that means that anyone can define themselves as a recognizer of learning and as one who is recognized for their learning and their space in society. And so, when Serge talks about open endorsement, and when I start building it into, helping the community build it into the Open Badges standards and then into implementations of that standards, it's because this community has values that anyone should be able to recognize learning, and we need the tool to put that right at their fingertips.
The technology is one of the elements. You can also have open recognition without technology. Okay, so there is not one-to-one match. I think it's open to technology as well.
Yes, we'd love to take any questions you have, any closing thoughts for the time that we had together, or comments for specific ones of us. Serge has the microphone.
I think different countries and different institutions also, for example, on European level, are trying to build their recognition tools or recognition strategies. So I like really the idea that this declaration and this process is calling for even more global recognition process. So going beyond Europe or going beyond the United States. So really, for me, this conference is also a symbolic effort of actually having people from all over the world almost, and joining our effort, joining our ideas and different tools that we use to have this more global recognition process. So I think there are a lot of good statements. Now I think the next step is to see what exactly we can do, what practically we can make, how we can take step by step certain aspects of this declaration and move forward to something really concrete. So looking forward for different spaces where we could elaborate more, build action plan, try out different kind of projects, how we can make this recognition movement more tangible and something that people can feel, really.
And we need also to build leadership. I can't remark that there are 3 white male Caucasians sitting. And I think... Yeah.
Different countries.
Okay, we just started, okay? That's our excuse. But I think next time we need to be much more diverse, and this is what we want to do. This is about recognition. Makes sense. So, our apologies is just... The worst started with Adam. We came second, so it's, now we have to...
I'd like to... I'd like to turn it around and put a question to the audience. Can anyone stand up and say what they will now do differently based on what they learned in these 3 days? Has anybody got a future use case story that they would want to talk about?
Sure. One of the things that I'm taking away from this is the need to add aspirational badges, pathways to our notion of recognition for formalized learning. I think it's going to be a bridge, actually, between informal and personal learning and formalized learning by stating what I want to learn and how I want to achieve that, and then allowing both faculty and community to provide signatures, hopefully encrypted signatures that can be acknowledging the achievement of steps along the way, which could last a lifetime.
Awesome. That's great. Any others?
I think when I came here on Wednesday, I was very much looking at it from an organizational point of view and from a university point of view, looking at employability. But I think one of the things I'm taking away from this is that we also have a social responsibility, and that a badge is not only valuable because an employer endorsed it, but it offers the student or the learner the opportunity to recognize a learning opportunity, basically, so they can see that they can pick up this experience and they can recognize it and they can share it with the others.
I've met and I've heard stories about people who are busy with badging that I wasn't aware of. Maybe this is a technical question, but for the 2.0 standard, and it was also one of the projects that was not discussed, but is there a way that's possible to make them more, that you can find badges more easily, that you can, not maybe the issued badge, but just the badge class, that we know that we can search worldwide and see all the badges that exist?